a All right, let's open the doors and welcome everybody to Q&A with Pharmacist Ben Fuchs and myself, Becca Dukes. Hello and welcome as everybody is coming into the waiting room. If you are out on Facebook or Rumble or YouTube and you would like to join us live, join us. Ben and Becca Zoom.com. That is Ben and Becca Zoom.com. So this program is being brought to you by dailywithdoc.com, where my team and I are here to assist you in a whole community as a resource so that we have a safe place that we can invite people and share information with people that then helps us to let people know how empowered they really are and how they can take their health into their own hands. And I want to make sure that, if you were invited by somebody specific, make sure that you get back with them. They took the time and cared enough to share this program with you because they knew that we provide information that is life-changing. And I cannot think of another man to bring into our collection of programs that we do every month who is coming from the medical field as a registered pharmacist. Now, he's seen a lot in his lifetime, and he has really gotten into the nutrition side and how our bodies react to nutrition and how they react to chemicals, and has decided there's one way better than the other. So, Pharmacist Ben, go ahead and join me if you would here.
Hi, Rebecca. Hello, everybody.
How are you this evening?
You forgot to say the content of this program is to provide nutritional
education only. It is not meant to take the place of your primary care physician.
I hate that.
Our products are not diagnosed or not meant to diagnose, treat, or prevent any disease. The FDA requires us to let you know that.
I know.
But folks, when you give the body what it needs, it
Yes.
can do an amazing stuff.
Yeah, and we don't need to talk about disease. Diseases are brand names. You know how there's Kleenex and there's tissues, right? Kleenex is a brand name for tissues. There's deterioration of the body, and then there's multiple sclerosis or arthritis or breast cancer, whatever you want to call your disease. So the diseases are just brand names. They're like copyrighted. So you can't violate the medical copyright by naming a disease. But you don't need to talk about disease. Just talk about how the body breaks down. So today we're talking about, Rebecca, you want to talk about breast disease. What did you say? Breast fire? What did you say here? Fibrocystic breast?
So just problematic breasts.
Yeah,
Let's
problematic breasts. But you also mentioned fibroadenomas. And then also, breast. Basically, you're talking about breast tissue. So in order to talk about breast tissue, you got to talk a little bit about hormones, the hormone system. And hormones are just really this crazy, confusing subject. Even endocrinologists don't really understand the interactions between all the hormones. So let's just real quickly talk about hormones, and then we'll talk about the main hormone that's involved in things like fibrocystic breasts or fibroadenomas or cysts or, as you put it, problematic breasts, which is really part and parcel of a syndrome that affects the entire female reproductive system and involves the major female reproductive hormone, which is really behind many health challenges and chronic diseases. And just as an aside, most chronic diseases, especially things like fibromyalgia, reproductive diseases, hypothyroidism, depression, these mostly affect women, not men. And the reason for that will become clearer when we start talking a little bit about the hormones that are responsible for, as you put it, problematic breasts. So real quickly, the hormone system is very, very confusing. About 50 hormones in the body. They're divided into several categories or classes. You have hormones that are peptide hormones or protein-based, amino acid-based hormones, things like thyroid hormone, insulin, melatonin, parathyroid hormone, growth hormone. These are hormones that are protein-based or peptide-based, more accurately. Then there's hormones that come from fats, specifically from essential fatty acids and other fatty acids. Those are hormones that are involved with inflammation. CBD and THC work with this hormone system, and these hormones of inflammation and anti-inflammation are technically called eicosanoids. They come from fatty acids, and if you've heard before that omega-6s are associated with inflammation, omega-3s are associated with anti-inflammation, it's because omega-6 fatty acids get converted into eicosanoids of inflammation, and omega-3 fatty acids get converted into eicosanoids of anti-inflammation. And you have gas hormones like nitric oxide and hydrogen sulfide. But the major hormones, the major class of hormones, the ones everybody talks about when they talk about hormones are the steroid hormones. And that's just one of the four classes of hormones: gaseous hormones, glycosinoid hormones, amino hormones, and steroid hormones. Four major classes of hormones. Most people, when they talk about hormones, talk about the steroid hormones. The steroid hormones are all derived from cholesterol. In fact, you could say accurately that all the steroid hormones are versions of cholesterol, derivatives of cholesterol. And when you say it that way, you can see how critical and how important cholesterol is. I was reading a book this week by a physician named Peter Attia, and he has a best-selling book now called Outlive. And in it, he talks about how silly the distinction of LDL and HDL cholesterol is, and this cholesterol lowering mania is. And I had to laugh because it's been something that Dr. Wallach's been talking about for decades, and I've been talking about for decades. And now finally, there are mainstream representatives who are understanding what anybody who understood biochemistry knew, and that is this whole ridiculousness around cholesterol lowering and cholesterol numbers and HDL and LDL does not number one, doesn't serve the public, it doesn't serve patients, and number two, it's just biochemical hooey. And I just gave me a little laugh when I saw that the mainstream is now starting to understand this. Anyway, the steroid hormones are all derived from cholesterol. Vitamin D is technically a steroid hormone that's derived from cholesterol. Pregnenolone, DHEA, these are steroid hormones that we don't really hear a lot about because, first of all, nobody really talks about vitamin D as being a hormone, except we do here at Longevity. Pregnenolone and DHEA are over-the-counter hormones, so they don't really get a lot of press. The main hormones that come from cholesterol that are that we talk about and that have really powerful health relevance, the over-the-counter hormones have health relevance, but they're not as powerful, are progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, and cortisol. And you can think of those as the big four steroid hormones. Progesterone, and they're all like all hormones, they're sort of balanced. They're released in proportion with each other, and this is what makes hormone replacement therapy and trying to work with your hormones so tricky. Is when you start taking one, you throw off the balances. I don't really like the word balance because it implies that there's the same amount on both sides, but there's a relationship between estrogen and progesterone, between estrogen and testosterone, between cortisol and estrogen, between estrogen and insulin, between testosterone and insulin, between estrogen and thyroid hormone. They're all between cortisol and thyroid hormone. So it's really tricky to play around with these hormones because when you start playing around with one, you monkey around with the whole system. That being said, the big four hormones, the big four steroid hormones, play tremendous roles in health as well as disease. So let's talk about these one by one, and we'll talk about the last one. When we talk about the last one, you'll understand how it relates to all these female health issues, including, as you say, problematic breasts. So cortisol, everybody knows, stress hormone. Keeping your cortisol stable is very important. Now, cortisol spikes first thing in the morning. That's why we get out of bed. But over the course of the day, it's supposed to gradually decrease. Many people are hypercortisol. Their cortisol levels stay high. They don't drop like they're supposed to. The most obvious reason is because of psychological duress. The body doesn't make a distinction between psychological stresses and physical stresses. So the stress of a credit card bill or of a dysfunctional relationship or a bad job or politics or whatever we stress about, to the body, it's the same as the stress from running from a lion or running from a tiger. So there's many things in our 21st century cultures, but particularly in the United States, that make the body think that it's in danger. And this is reflected in high levels of cortisol. When cortisol levels go up, a whole spectrum of biochemical phenomena occur, many of which are perceived as being unpleasant, including anxiety, depression, weight gain, insomnia, infertility, high blood pressure, poor wound healing, and most importantly in this day and age, suppressed immune system, an immune suppression. One of the phenomena that occurs in the body when hormone levels stay high is something called resistance. Many of you have heard of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is when insulin levels stay high and the cells stop listening to insulin. So the body has to make more insulin, cells stop listening to that level, and on and on and on it goes. So one of the ways the body controls cellular response to hormones is by dumbing it down, turning down the volume on the hormones. Real quickly, the way hormones work is they interact with cells at the level of the membrane. In the case of steroid hormones, they actually go into the cell. In the case of the peptide hormones, they tend to stay on the outside of the cell, although some of them do go on the inside of the cell. In any case, that requires an interaction between the hormone and the cell for the hormone to have its effect, which tells you something very important. Number one, the body has a way of controlling how effective that hormone response will be by how effective the receptor will be. It's called a receptor. That the part of the cell that connects with the hormone is called a receptor. Under conditions of hormone deficiency or hormone excess, the body has a control point. It will make less receptor, or cells will make less receptors or more receptors. So the cells have a way of controlling how well they'll respond to hormones. If there's too much cortisol going on, floating around, the body will stop making receptors. Cells will stop making receptors or make less receptors in order for that cortisol, that high level of cortisol, not to have an excess effect. Of course, then if we're still under stress, we'll make more cortisol to override the deficiencies in receptors. So that tells us something very important. It's not only the hormone that determines the effect it's going to have on the cell. It's the receptor, and it's also the membrane that's going to have an effect. So if you have problems making cell membranes, for example, you're not going to have the same hormone benefits. This is very important for women, or for men too, for folks who are on hormone replacement therapy. If you have a cell membrane problem, just taking hormones is not going to give you a hormone effect. For example, if you don't have enough essential fatty acids, if you're not intaking enough essential fatty acids, your cell membranes aren't going to be healthy enough or resilient enough or flexible enough in order to allow the receptor to bind or match up with the hormone, which is why using essential fatty acids, using your ultimate EFAs, is a great way to improve hormone response. In fact, using your ultimate EFAs may give you better hormone response than just taking hormone replacement therapy. So in other words, what I'm saying here is there's places you can work with your hormones that aren't necessarily the hormones. For example, the cell membrane. Essential fatty acids, your ultimate EFAs, also have a hormone-like effect on their own. That's another thing that you can do, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So cortisol, stress hormone. Lowering your cortisol levels is extremely important for anybody who's dealing with long-term chronic diseases. And the best way to lower your cortisol levels is obviously to relax, to lighten up, to psychologically relax and relax the body as well. Slow, deep breathing, all the things we talk about for reducing the stress response will lower cortisol. One of the most important reasons why cortisol gets spiked in our culture is because of low blood sugar. And low blood sugar, of course, follows high blood sugar. High blood sugar leads to low blood sugar via the hormone insulin, and hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar, is one of the reasons why cortisol levels spike. In fact, if your cortisol levels are spiking and you don't know why, that might be one of the main reasons, and stabilizing your blood sugar is very important for helping with cortisol. There's also supplements you can use to help with cortisol: vitamin E, vitamin A, melatonin, which is an amino hormone, actually balances out cortisol. And then another hormone that we'll talk about here in a second also has cortisol lowering effects, and that is progesterone. Progesterone is like a hidden gem hormone. It's got many beneficial effects. It's non-prescription and relatively non-toxic. It is non-toxic, I would say. If you took too much, you'd just get drowsy or fall asleep. It has a relaxing effect that balances out cortisol as well as estrogen, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Progesterone is available over the counter, very easy to get. And personally, I think everybody should be using progesterone, including men. Men benefit from progesterone as well as women. Progesterone is not, you have to get it on the internet, or it's not really considered to be a nutrient because it is a hormone, but it is readily available, and it has wonderful calming effects on the body that antagonize or balance cortisol as well as estrogen. Progesterone and estrogen go together, just like cortisol, just like progesterone and cortisol go together in terms of balancing. Then there's male hormone testosterone. Men always want to talk about when they get older, how can they get more testosterone? Obviously, testosterone keeps you young, manly, virile. For men, it keeps them youthful. The best way to get there's a couple best ways to keep your testosterone going. Number one is reduce your sugar intake. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, sugar will cause you to get ingestion of sugar will increase body fat. Female hormone is made in body fat. Female hormone is made in body fat. It will antagonize testosterone. So the more body fat you're carrying, the more feminized, the more estrogenic you'll be. If you're a man, the more feminized you'll be. If you're a woman, the more excess estrogen you'll have. And we'll talk about why that's a problem here in a second. So losing body fat is very important for men if they're trying to get more testosterone. And also lowering insulin levels or stabilizing insulin levels is also important for increasing testosterone. In fact, those are probably the two best ways and they go together, to improve testosterone levels. Number one, to lose body fat. Number two, to stabilize blood sugar and insulin levels. Also, with testosterone, resistance training and muscle building will increase testosterone. So testosterone, it's interesting because testosterone it's not, women make testosterone too, but it's responsible for male secondary sex characteristics, things like muscle development and sexuality, and things that you do that are manly type of things, weightlifting and entrepreneurship, or I don't want to say that's only men, but aggressiveness, moving forward, kinds of things that we attribute with the masculine side of life. It's not just men, it's masculinity, and women have that too, will increase your testosterone. The same thing is true about estrogen. Feminine kinds of things, thinking feminine thoughts, thinking sexy thoughts for women will help raise their estrogen levels. So things that men do, that like lifting weights and exercise and athletic performance, raise their testosterone. Things that women do, like fertility enhancing things, will help with their estrogen. Interestingly, progesterone is a fertility hormone and estrogen is a birth control. And that's one of the big problems with estrogen. Now that we're talking about estrogen, that's really the villain in a lot of health challenges is estrogen. I hesitate to say that because obviously estrogen is an important hormone for female sexual characteristics, and its main role is to help us make babies, but it's a very, very, very powerful hormone. In fact, estrogen is the most powerful of all the steroid hormones, and it is active in tiny amounts, and it has to be cleared out of the body very quickly. It has to be broken down quickly. In the body, estrogen is broken down in 2 steps. And interestingly, the first step creates a very extra super powerful form of estrogen. Estrogen is already powerful, and it causes cells to divide. It's responsible for inflammation. It makes things happen. It's a stress hormone. It's involved with the stress response. But estrogen becomes super powerful when it is not completely detoxified. Let me say that again because that's really important. Estrogen is detoxified in 2 steps. They call it phase 1 and phase 2. If you don't go to phase 2, if you're not clearing out estrogen, if your phase 2 detoxification is not effective, phase 1 detoxification will create a more toxic super estrogen. And this is responsible for a lot of the problems that we attribute with estrogen, including endometriosis, fibromyalgia, reproductive health problems, as you mentioned earlier, Rebecca, problematic breasts, fibroids, cysts, fibroadenomas, reproductive cancers, breast cancers, menstrual problems, PMS. These can all be attributed to estrogen and superestrogen. And so learning to control estrogen is extremely important. It becomes extra problematic because estrogen is a generic molecule in nature. It's found in many plants, for example. Many plants make what are called phytoestrogens, plant estrogens, And those have a chemical structure that is similar to human estrogen. And for women who are not detoxifying estrogen effectively, or who are already producing high levels of estrogen, phytoestrogens can just add to the load. There are also chemicals in plastics, for example, that act like estrogens. These are called xenoestrogens. There are ingredients in cosmetics that can act like estrogens. Sunscreens can act like estrogens. Preservatives in cosmetics can act like estrogens. There are drugs that act like estrogens. Birth control pills, of course, act like estrogens, and hormone replacement therapy is obviously estrogen, and these drugs find their way into the water supply. So many of us are drinking estrogen-laden water in addition to being exposed to estrogen, estrogen-like molecules in cosmetics and in plastics and other sources, and plants and phytoestrogens, etc. So we have a big problem with excess estrogen in our culture that is compounded by problems detoxifying estrogen. Phase 2 detoxification, by the way, occurs in the liver. So if you have a liver problem, many people do, 1 out of 3 Americans have fatty liver disease, then you're likely to have problems with estrogen. Estrogen is also eliminated through the bowels via the action of bile. So if you have a gallbladder problem, or you don't have a gallbladder, you're at high risk for estrogen issues. If you are overloading your bile system by eating the wrong foods, or by being on a lot of prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs for that matter, if you're not making enough bile because you have a gallbladder or a liver problem, all of these can compound the estrogen issue, which can lead to all the estrogenic effects that we talked about. There's a major relationship between bacteria in the gut and estrogen metabolism, and there's a complex of bacteria called the estrobolome that are important for detoxifying estrogen. If you have what's called dysbiosis, the wrong bacteria in your gut, not enough bacteria in the gut, you can also have a problem with estrogen clearance. And if you're not eliminating, if you're constipated, you can have a problem with estrogen clearance. To compound the problem, you can see how it gets really complicated here. When estrogen levels are high, the thyroid tends to slow down. Elevated estrogen levels are associated with hypothyroidism. When the thyroid slows down, that will slow down the movement of the bowels, and that will cause constipation, which will make your estrogen problem worse, which will make your hypothyroid problem worse, which will make your elimination problem worse, which will make your estrogen problem worse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a huge downward spiral. And I would venture to say that problems with estrogen and estrogen metabolism are behind a huge proportion of chronic degenerative diseases that occur in women and even in men. Prostate issues, by the way, can be associated with excess estrogen in men, so men can have problems with estrogen too. So what do? What's the solution? You can see it gets really confusing here. Well, a lot of things you could do. For cortisol, lighten up, relax, use balance supplements that help balance out cortisol, including progesterone and melatonin. Those are important for cortisol. You can use vitamin A and vitamin E. Those have a stabilizing effect on cortisol. Essential fatty acids are they're essential. So obviously everybody should be using them, but they're especially relevant. They're especially relevant for all steroid hormone problems. And they're literally estrogen-like in their effects. So essential fatty acids can go a long way towards stabilizing estrogen. And for women on hormone replacement therapy, I would highly recommend using essential fatty acids before you go on HRT, or at least with your HRT, so maybe you can lower your HRT. HRT is not all that. There's problems with HRT because estrogen is such a problematic hormone, and doctors will try to mitigate the problems with HRT, or mitigate the problems with estrogen, by using what they call biest or triest, which is 3 different kinds of estrogen. And sometimes that helps and it's a little bit better, but you're still playing with fire when you use HRT, in my humble opinion. For testosterone, if you want to make sure that you're building testosterone, do building things. Work out, lift weights, reduce your intake of sugar, lose body fat. And there's also nutrients that you can use to support testosterone. Zinc is a superstar for supporting testosterone. Vitamin A can help with supporting testosterone. Magnesium can help with supporting testosterone. And all the B complex are important. You'll find a lot of these in one of my favorite longevity products, which I don't talk about as much as I should, which is the Zero test. The Zero test has got it's pretty much like throwing everything at the hormone problem, including glutamine and arginine, these building amino acids. There's all the B complex that we talked about earlier. Alpha lipoic acid is in the zero test. The zero test is a great gift for women to give their husbands or their boyfriends if they're older, because it has such a pro-testosterone and pro-anabolic effect. That's the zero test. And of course, there's also the zero fem, which is the female version, which is important for estrogen metabolism. I consider the zero test and the zero fem to be the most important hormone balancing products that Youngevity has. There's a few other ones that Youngevity has, but I like the zero test and the zero fem. And then we come to estrogen. A lot of the nutrients that are important for balancing out estrogen are in the zero fem. Selenium is extremely important for estrogen metabolism, and it is in the zero fem, but I would be making sure that you're on the ultimate selenium. All menopausal women should be on the ultimate selenium. One of the most obvious problems with estrogen, I shouldn't say obvious, but dramatic problems with estrogen metabolism occurs when women are in menopause. And all women understand that there are there are symptoms that happen with menopause, especially night sweats and hot flashes and anxiety and depression and weight gain. All of these unpleasantries are like a laundry list of things that happen to the body when it is manifesting the stress response. That's extremely important to recognize, because when you recognize that, you'll see that you can calm down the estrogenic symptom, the menopausal symptoms that are associated with estrogen by calming the body down. Number one, for women who are using hot flash or who are getting hot flashes, get on the zero fem, because the selenium and the magnesium and the vitamin B6 and the vitamin C, in addition to the herbs, will help balance out excess estrogen. Progesterone will also help. Progesterone, by the way, is really interesting because not only does it block estrogen or antagonize estrogen, it also makes cells more responsive to estrogen. So it has like a double effect. It will calm down the estrogenic response, and it will make the body a little bit more sensitive to estrogen. So it's actually a much better strategy for menopausal women to use progesterone than estrogen, in addition to the fact that progesterone levels drop dramatically after menopause or during menopause and after menopause. Estrogen is a hormone that you're always making. As long as you have body fat, you're always going to be making estrogen, because estrogen is made in body fat. So for women who are dealing with the unpleasantries of menopause, the menopausal symptoms, using calming strategies like progesterone, like selenium and zinc, which will help stabilize estrogen, like melatonin, and most especially avoiding hypoglycemia. Under conditions of high blood sugar, then low blood sugar, or an excessive insulin response, which can happen with chronic high blood sugar, you will have all of the manifestations of the stress response that we associate with menopause. So for menopausal women, calming the body down by reducing sugar intake, reducing cortisol, and balancing out estrogen can be a godsend. And many women will recognize that they are more prone towards hot flashes and night sweats if they eat a lot of sugar before they go to, or at dinner, not necessarily before they go to bed, but in the evening. A lot of women are drinking wine in the evening. Wine has a insulin spiking effect that can cause problems with, can cause menopausal symptoms. So reducing sugar intake, treating yourself like a diabetic, getting on the sweeties, these are all great ways to reduce the estrogenic effects or the estrogenic symptoms of that happen when you have menopause. Now, you may say, well, why do I have estrogenic symptoms if I'm going through menopause? My estrogen's dropping. That is because your progesterone is dropping faster than your estrogen. So the calming hormone is dropping faster, and so your estrogen is relatively higher. So yes, it's true, your estrogen's dropping, but it's still higher than the progesterone because the progesterone is dropping faster. Interestingly, as your estrogen drops, a lot of women will experience things like body hair or hair loss, which are both associated with changes with estrogen dropping relative to testosterone. So supporting the estrogen response by using progesterone and essential fatty acids can mitigate some of these testosterone effects without throwing you into excess estrogen, the excess estrogen that HRT can provide. So for women who are exhibiting acne, oily skin, body hair, these are male hormone kinds of effects. Using progesterone can be helpful. Using essential fatty acids can be helpful. And then also using, if you're using HRT, you can use HRT, but I would suggest things like the Zero Fem, which will be like a nutritional version of HRT. You can see how unbelievably confusing this whole thing can be, but the bottom line is you want to calm the body down. That's, if you want to think about how you want to handle all these things, calm the body down. And if you say, well, I'm depressed, believe it or not, depression can be the end result of a hyped up body, of a hyped up response that happens after anxiety. So calming the body down by using calming nutrients, by using your ultimate EFAs, by stabilizing your blood sugar, those are the best ways to handle hormonal issues, in my opinion. I should probably throw out the Hemp FX also, which has a nice calming effect on the body. The Hemp FX is, of course, cannabinoids, which are eicosanoids that have anti-inflammatory benefits, and they can have a nice calming effect too. All these things we talk about with stabilizing estrogen are important, not just for menopause. I emphasize menopause, but it's also important for fibromyalgia. It's also important for menstrual issues like PMS, and it's also important for autoimmune disease issues, which are often associated with excess estrogen. So it's not just important for menopausal issues, also for anything that has to do with excess estrogen. And as I said earlier, most chronic disease occurs in the estrogenic of us, which are women, which are more estrogenic. Last thing I'll say is melasma. Hyperpigmentation is associated with the stress response, also linked to excess stress hormone cortisol and excess hormone, stress-like hormone, estrogen. So for hyperpigmentation and melasma, you want to also use some of these cortisol balancing and estrogen balancing strategies. High blood sugar is also an excess insulin or hyperinsulinemia, they call it, is also associated with melasma or hyperpigmentation. For hyperpigmentation, we have a tendency to blame the sun and think we're going to use sunscreens. The hormonal cause or the hormonal link to melasma should not be underestimated if you're interested in keeping hyperpigmentation at bay. All right. What do you think, guys?
Can I get a wow?
There's a lot of stuff, huh?
We've got lots of comments going on. It says, Ben is so full of information.
Well, it's
yeah,
kind of confusing. It's kind of confusing. And by the way, I'm noticing here, acne, oily skin, excess body hair are signs of excess testosterone relative to the drop in estrogen. And it's not so much that you have too much of a hormone, it's that you have too much relative to the other. So it's like, here's estrogen and testosterone. If you can see my hands here, here's estrogen and testosterone. When your estrogen levels drop, the testosterone is relatively higher. And this is why these things are so confusing, is because it's not that you have high testosterone, it's that it's high relative to the drop in estrogen. Does that make sense? Your testosterone could be the same. It's not like you're making lots of testosterone, but it drops, so it's relatively higher.
So the ratios are
proportions, yes, ratios.
Yeah.
Say.
Wow. Well, I'm definitely gonna have to watch this one again because here I'm trying to listen.
It's so much. Even endocrinologists don't understand it, and I'm just giving you like the superficial understanding of it because it's so darn confusing, and there's so much things to understand. I don't even like really talking about hormones, and I'll tell you why. Everything works with hormones. So all the things we talk about when it comes to staying healthy, making sure your digestive system is working correctly, you're staying away from problem foods like gluten, you're getting enough fiber, and you're not eating an excess amount of calories, that you're keeping your blood sugar stable, making sure you're using your sweeties, not eating a lot of processed foods and carbohydrates, making sure you're calming the body down, making sure that you're not in a hyper stress state or a hyper cortisol state. All of these are effective because they work at the level of the hormones. So if you do the right things, your body will take care of the hormones. Making sure you're supplementing, especially with fats, especially with your ultimate EFAs, making sure that you're eating the right foods, making sure that you're exercising a little bit, making sure that you're resting, making sure that you're oxygenating. Let the body take care of the hormones.
All right. Well, there's a lot that we can do on our own that supports the body in being able to do that.
Yes, that's why if we just do everything Dr. Wallach says, if we just make sure we're using the Mighty 90, the fourfold square of health, nutriate, oxygenate, move, and rest. Focus on the 3 points at the triangle of disease, the digestive system, the blood sugar system, and the stress management system. The body will take care of the hormones.
Okay. Well, that's simple. It
I,
just has
I like
been
to
so
simplify things.
yeah, it's been so convoluted and
it is very complex and convoluted because everything is linked to each other. Insulin is linked to testosterone and estrogen. Estrogen is linked to testosterone and cortisol. Cortisol is linked to progesterone, and they're all thyroid hormone is involved with everything. They're all connected. You can't really isolate them. You can't take one hormone and then expect to have just an effect on that hormone system. And by the way, you can't work on I'll just throw this out. I know we really didn't talk about it. You can't work on the thyroid. The thyroid, there's no way to just focus on the thyroid with iodine or with thyroid medicine. It doesn't work because the thyroid is connected to everything else. You got to work on the estrogen. You got to work on the intestine. You got to work on the digestive system. You got to work on cortisol in order to work at the level of thyroid. This is why thyroid medicine doesn't help. And I should tell you, I forgot to mention this. There is a remarkable, powerful, super effective B vitamin, pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, that is incredibly important for the adrenal glands. And many of these steroid hormones, in fact, once a woman's ovaries stop making estrogen or progesterone, for example, the adrenal glands pick up the slack and estrogen. And this is one of the reasons why women have hot flashes and problems with adrenal stress when they go through menopause, is because the adrenal glands are working overtime. So the adrenal glands make cortisol, but when your ovaries stop making your female hormones, the adrenal glands start making them. So now if your adrenal glands are burning out on cortisol or making a cortisol, now you put an extra load on the adrenal glands. And this is one of the reasons that accounts for many menopausal symptoms, as well as just the duress that women go through when they have menopause, is this extra burden on the adrenal glands. Of course, if you want to work on the adrenal glands, there's lots of things you could do, which we talked about, and most especially reduce your stress level, reduce your blood sugar, or lower your blood sugar and stabilize your insulin. And also you can use this remarkable nutrient, which is in the longevity product De-Stress, by the way, called pantothenic acid, which you don't hear a lot about, but it's very, very important for adrenal health.
All right. Fantastic. Oh, I love it. Knowledge. Folks, I hope you are being a sponge and absorbing this in. And I know that's a lot to absorb in one sitting, but we have the replay on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, and also it will be on dailywithdoc.com. Make sure that you are following critical health news on these channels or on these platforms, so that you can follow our channel, Critical Health News, so you don't miss a thing. I just love all the information, Ben, that you have put together in your moments of truth and everything that we're able to use as a resource to help spread the message.
Thank you.
It's just, I love it. And then to be part of a program like this and Daily with Doc, where I am, right there helping spread the message and making resources that the whole community can take advantage of and utilize. So I'm so thankful that I'm on your team, Ben, and we're able to work together to do that.
Likewise, Rebecca. I'm thankful I'm on your team. Thank you for
yes, I'm glad to have you as one of the tools in my toolbox. That's for sure.
All right.
Well, we have a couple questions.
Sure.
And the first one is coming from Coach Rod. He wants to know, what about when the doctor says you have too much creatine in the kidneys?
No, that's creatinine.
Okay,
creatinine.
Okay, creatinine.
Yeah, creatinine is a waste product that's cleared out by the kidneys. When you have kidney problems, your creatinine levels will build up, and that's a measurement of kidney disease. So when you have high levels of creatinine, that demonstrates that your kidneys aren't clearing it out effectively. So creatinine is different from creatine. Creatinine is a waste product. Creatine is a building product. So creatinine has to be cleared out by the kidneys, and it's a measurement of they'll measure your creatinine levels to see how effective your kidneys are at clearing out creatinine, how healthy your kidneys are.
Okay, so creatine is something that bodybuilders take.
not to, well, yeah, but everybody should take creatine. Creatine is incredibly important for anti-aging. It's important for skin health. It has sun protective benefits. It's a incredibly valuable supplement, especially for frail people, especially for elderly folks or people who are post-surgery. Creatine is it's, yes, you're right, bodybuilders use it, but everybody should use creatine.
Okay, so, but it's not the one that would be built up in the kidneys.
That's
It's the
creatinine.
creatinine.
That's creatinine, which is a waste product.
Okay, so how would you clear it?
Improve your kidney function. The most important thing to do to improve kidney function is to work on your sugar. Most important reason why the kidneys become messed up is because of high blood sugar, and kidney disease and diabetes go hand in hand.
Okay.
The kidneys are made up. Kidneys are so amazing. You have two kidneys, and this is how important the kidneys are. God gave us two of them, and you do fine with one, but you got two. That's how important that they're deemed by who, the divine creator gave us two of them. But even one kidney, you can be at like 20% or 30% function and still be okay. So when you drop under 25 or 20%, that's when you run into serious problems. But you can still be okay at 40 or 50% functioning of the kidney, because there's so much redundancy in it, because clearing the blood, the kidneys clean the blood, and cleaning the blood is obviously very, very important. So the way the kidneys clear the blood is by shunting the blood through progressively tinier and tinier and tinier vessels until you get to super, super tiny vessels where nothing can get through. That's only blood can get through. Any particles that are bigger than the blood or bigger than blood cells will not make it through, and they'll get excreted. However, sugar at that level is very damaging, and sugar can burn, glycate they call it, but it's technically, it really is a kind of burning, can burn those blood vessels, those tiny, tiny blood vessels. And glycation at the level of the kidneys is a huge problem. And that's the main reason why people get kidney disease, is because of broken down blood vessels, usually because of glycation. Stress on the kidneys can also lead to cysts and also lead to polyps and various growths at the level of the kidney. And by the way, I didn't say this, I should have said this, but growths and cysts and fibroids or fibers are usually a sign of problems with estrogen. So anytime you have growths or polyps or cysts, think estrogen, and also think insulin. Insulin and estrogen are the two major hormones that are involved with excess growth. And when you think about it, insulin's a growth substance and estrogen's a growth substance. So it makes sense that when your insulin is off, insulin is high, and your estrogen is high, that you'll have growths, polyps, fibroids, cysts. And anytime you have those kinds of things happening in your body or on your body, skin tags, for example, are a classic sign of diabetes or pre-diabetes. So anytime you have these growths anywhere in the body, think estrogen and think insulin. It can happen in the kidneys as well. But the major reason why we have kidney problems is because of damage at the level of the blood vessels from sugar. Whenever you have a kidney issue, treat yourself like a diabetic, or just go ketogenic, or use your sweeties. Anything you can do to help stabilize your blood sugar and lower your insulin.
Okay, so you talked about cleaning the blood. What is your favorite way of cleaning the blood that longevity offers?
The longevity offers vitamin C, anything with vitamin C beyond tangy tangerine, NAC and the immortalium. NAC is a chelating agent. Anything you do to chelate the blood. Also, obviously, make sure you're going to the bathroom, making sure you're eliminating through the bowels as well as through the kidneys is important for cleaning the blood. Drinking water is important for cleaning the blood. And probably the most important is not getting toxins in the blood. And the main way toxins get into the blood is through leaky gut. So working on a leaky gut, working on the health of the intestine by staying away from problem foods, and making sure you're using your IP6 or I-26 as well, which we don't talk about. That's an awesome product, the I-26. And then make sure you get fiber, as well as fucoidin, like slimy kinds of things that can help protect the lining of the intestine, the fucoid Z, that kind of thing.
Well, I introduced Dr. Wallach to I-26, and he was reading the label. He was so excited when it says right on there, provides 25% of your cholesterol recommended daily allowance.
That's great. He didn't know about the I-26. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
No, he talks about it all the time.
It's a great one. It's a great one. I do it every day.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So next time, let's talk about the
Yeah, let's talk about,
I-26.
that's good. We'll talk about I-26. That's good.
Yeah, because it is an amazing product and so much that it does that we need
The
to make sure that
technology is
people
really
know.
clever. The technology, I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell you about it now. We'll talk about it next week. But it's
Yeah,
really,
so folks, you definitely want to
it's
tune
very
in
clever
next
technology.
month. And as soon as we get a date, we will definitely be posting that, letting people know about the date that we have for Q&A with pharmacist Ben Fuchs and Becca Dukes. I was just looking to see if there were any more related questions here in the chat. And I don't see that there's any related chat questions. So folks, let's just open up the floor. If anybody has any questions for Pharmacist Ben, especially if it relates to estrogen, hormone, and what we talked about today, go ahead and raise your hand. We only have about 5 minutes here before Pharmacist Ben has to go and meet his next appointment. So anybody. Okay, on YouTube. Thank you, AJ. On YouTube, there is a question. Oh, so Lynette has a son with Crohn's,
Okay.
also stressed and very high stress job. So that the
Yeah,
stress
Crohn's
job
disease.
is not going to change.
Yeah, Crohn's disease is tragic for two levels. Number one, it's tragic because it's miserably uncomfortable. I mean, it's just a miserable condition, but it's so tragic because it's so unnecessary. You know, I don't know if you remember Jordan Rubin. Were you around when Jordan Rubin was? He wrote a book. I forgot the name of his book actually, but what I remember about the book is the pictures of him with Crohn's and after Crohn's, and it's amazing. It's mind blowing, really. With Crohn's, he was scrawny and sickly, and you could see his ribs, and it was horrifying. After he took care of his Crohn's, he was normal. He was strong. He was a handsome, virile, powerful young man. And all he did was work on his food. Simple as that. No drugs, no doctors, just worked on his food and worked on his digestive system. So, for first thing you want to do is you want to eliminate problem foods. Seems obvious, but that's what you got to do. And you eliminate problem foods by doing a food diary, writing down everything you eat, see how you feel after you eat. When you have a problem, you eliminate those foods. Next thing, probiotics, good bacteria. I like the nightly essence. You may have to experiment with different types and different formulas. And probiotics are very tricky because unlike vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids, the mighty 90 essential nutrients, probiotics are living. They're creatures. They're living creatures. And so it's tricky to get the balance right and you get the formula right. I get great results from the nightly essence, and that's what I suggest everybody starts off with. There's also the ultimate microbiome, which was formulated by Dr. Conway, and Dr. Conway is like an intestinal guru, a digestive system guru, and she's been talking about the intestine and the digestive system since, I don't know, 20 plus years that I've known her, and she actually has a great book about it too. And I think she formulated the ultimate microbiome. There you go. That's all about the gut. Great book. If you want to read an easy to read, information packed book, get Dr. Conway's book. I'm a big fan of Dr. Conway. So anyway, I think she formulated the ultimate microbiome. It's designed to feed the good bacteria. The I-26 also is important. And so focusing on the gut, making sure he's getting enough fiber, having regular bowel movements. If he has diarrhea, sometimes people have Crohn's disease have diarrhea. Soluble fiber can help slow down the release, slow down the movement of foods through the intestine. Focus on what you're putting in the intestine. I know that sounds obvious, but that's the solution. You can't have if you work on the intestine, your intestinal symptoms will disappear. And Crohn's disease or celiac disease or ulcerative colitis or IBS or IBD, all of these are intestinal problems based on what's getting into the intestine. And what's getting into the intestine is food, or what's not getting into the intestine in terms of things like probiotics and fermented foods and fiber. So it's really tragic on two fronts. It's tragic because the symptoms are heartbreaking, and it's tragic because it's so easy to resolve.
So it sounds like he's had quite an ordeal with it. with
If he wants to
colostomy
contact,
bag and everything.
if he wants to contact me, ben@ksco.com, I'll work with him directly. But I don't want to make it sound like I'm some hero. It's very simple, not difficult to do. But if you want some help, I'll be happy to help him. I'll coach him through it.
All right. Thank you so much. So Lynette, ben@ksco.com. That's how you get a hold of Pharmacist Ben. There's another question wanting to know if glaucoma is related to estrogen at all.
Not directly, but it is. Glaucoma is inflammatory, so it could. I don't know that there's a direct correlation, but glaucoma is an inflammatory issue, and estrogen is a pro-inflammatory hormone, especially superestrogen. By the way, superestrogen is called catechol estrogen. If you're a biochemist or you want to look it up and do some research, I call it superestrogen because it's a little bit more graphic. It tells you more what it does, but technically it's called catechol estrogens. And I don't know of a direct connection, but because both are inflammatory, glaucoma is an inflammatory condition that affects the valve inside the eye that allows fluids to drain. When you have glaucoma, you don't drain your fluids as effectively, and that could be that can definitely be associated with imbalances in inflammatory hormones like estrogen. I don't know of a direct correlation though.
Okay. And then another one wants to know, does heart-related issues affect hormone or estrogen levels?
No.
So does heart-related issues affect
yeah,
estrogen?
I'm sure. I wouldn't say that the heart directly affects estrogen, although blood supply would affect the glands that make the estrogen. So I suppose that it could work that way. But more importantly, estrogen can affect the heart. Estrogen, elevated levels of estrogen are inflammatory, and that can exacerbate or even cause heart disease. So estrogen, there is a link between super or catechol estrogens and circulatory problems, blood clots and vascular issues. So yes, estrogen, but because it's pro-inflammatory, can thicken the blood, make the heart work harder, and also create blood problems like blood clots that can cause sluggishness or that can slow down the movement of or the delivery of nutrients and oxygen and the elimination of toxins through the blood. So yes, estrogen does have a vascular effect. Estrogen is also a growth substance, so it can cause cells to divide rapidly inside the vessels. Estrogen and circulatory problems go hand in hand for sure, and that can also cause problems with the heart, obviously.
All right. Wow. Lots of things that estrogen does.
Yes. That's the bottom line. That's the take-home message. Lots of things estrogen does.
And then Joe wants to know, can you tell me what the best food is to seed your gut when taking probiotic pills? Now,
Fiber.
You mentioned nightly essence.
The best food, he said, or the best supplement? The best food, right?
He asked for the best food to seed your gut when taking probiotics.
The best food, fiber foods, vegetables and fruits, anything that has fiber in it. When you say seed your gut, fiber feeds bacteria. Bacteria feed on fiber. Not only does that help bacteria proliferate, but it also when bacteria eat the fiber, not only will they proliferate, but they release very important chemicals, especially fats, that are super important for intestinal health, as well as for brain health and the health of the nervous system, especially something called butyrates.
Okay. All right. And Jordan Rubin's books, he has two of them, The Maker's Diet, which I think is the one that you were thinking of, or Planet
Diet, right.
Heal Thyself.
Yeah, it was The Maker's Diet.
Yeah, I have that one as well. So fantastic. Well, awesome. Let me just double check on this side, see if we had any questions come up. Or I have Marilyn that has a question, and then we have Coach Rod. So,
okay,
Marilyn, what is your question for Pharmacist Ben?
I have a question. Women are having a lot of bleeding issues. I mean, a lot lately.
Like what kind of bleeding? Menstrual bleeding?
They just don't stop bleeding.
Yeah, it could be endometriosis or something like endometriosis. Think estrogen. Remember, estrogen makes things grow, including the endometrial lining. You know what the endometrial lining is? The lining of the womb. That's what you lose when you have your period. That's the stuff that comes out. When the endometrial lining overgrows, you'll have a lot of blood. Estrogen is a growth hormone. It makes things grow, including the endometrial lining. And so you all that sounds like a classic estrogen issue. And it's not surprising that it would be happening more and more because of the reasons I said about xenoestrogens and estrogens in the water and estrogens in plastics and estrogen in cosmetics and estrogens in perfumes and estrogen. We're swimming in an ocean of estrogen. So that makes perfect sense. All the things we talked about for balancing out estrogen, including progesterone, using essential fatty acids, reducing levels of stress. All of these can help lower estrogen levels. Let me think. There's working at the level of the liver. There's a wonderful supplement called calcium D-glucarate, which helps the body detoxify superestrogen. Cruciferous vegetables contain something called sulforaphane, which helps detoxify or improves detoxification of superestrogen. Working on the gallbladder, making sure you're using your ultimate enzymes for bile support. Using phospholipids like lecithin can help you make bile. Probiotics support the estrobolome. Everything we talked about for helping get rid of excess estrogen and balancing out estrogen should be considered for women who have that bleeding issue. Sounds like an endometrial lining issue.
Thank you.
All right, great question, Marilyn. And let's go over to Coach Rod.
Coach Rod.
Can you unmute yourself?
How you
There
doing? Can
you
you hear
go.
me?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Hi, Coach Rod.
Yes.
How you doing, Pharmacist Ben? How are you?
Hey, what's going on?
I'm trying to see if you agree with the new things that women are doing, like the pellets and the hormone shots, and what do you
I don't want to say I
suggest other
agree.
than
I don't, it's not for me to say. I wouldn't do it if it was me. I wouldn't mess around with my hormones. I wouldn't take testosterone, or I wouldn't play around with my hormones that way. But that's just me. Everybody has to make their own decision. I think if it was me and I was a woman, I would be using progesterone. I'd be using essential fatty acids. I'd be using the Zerafem. I'd be lowering my blood sugar. I'd be reducing my superestrogen. I'd be doing adrenal support. All the things we talked about here. I don't feel it's in my place. I'm not a woman and I don't have that issue. So it's not in my place to say what a woman should do. I wouldn't do it if it was me.
I'm not agree, but what you recommend the most. That's what I meant.
All the things we talked about: adrenal support, intestinal support, liver support. Use melatonin and progesterone and lower your cortisol and stabilize your blood sugar. These are all the places that you can work in a healthy way that will not only help you with your estrogen, but it'll add years to your life. These are all just the healthy things that we should all be doing. That's the bottom line here, is that we don't want to focus specifically on the hormones. We want to focus on all the things we know we should be doing. I got to lower my blood sugar, Rod. You got to lower your blood sugar too. You got to keep your insulin stable. You're not a woman. You don't have problems with your estrogen, but you still have to keep your blood sugar stable. You still should be using your ultimate EFAs. You still should be focusing on adrenal health and liver health, regardless of whether you have an estrogen issue. So what I'm saying is everybody needs to be doing these things. When you focus on specific hormones, it's kind of like you're making it too targeted. You're making it too specific. We want to generalize here. We're all human beings. We all need our blood sugar stabilized. We all need to be lowering our cortisol. We all need to be exercising. We all need to be breathing correctly, reducing stress. And these are simple, basic things that we should all be doing. We all need the mighty 90 essential nutrients. That's how I prefer to think about it. Make sense? Yay?
Oh,
Is that a yes?
is that yes?
That's a yes. Yeah, it makes
Okay.
sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach Rod.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you, Coach. All right. Let me
All
double
right.
check. And I think we are at the end of our time here.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca and everybody. We'll see you on our next monthly call.
Yes, we will.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
everybody.
so much,
Okay,
everybody. Pharmacist Ben Fuchs. Let's give it up.
bye.
We appreciate you so much. And if I could get my co-hosts on with me, thank you so much for helping me, navigate through this whole system. It is not a one-man circus, people. It takes a team. And if you were invited to this program by somebody specific, they are probably part of an amazing community. We are just one little team within this amazing community. And we all work together. We're like family. So if you are looking for a community to be part of, a family to be part of, a way that you can be or serve a greater purpose that goes beyond yourself and is actually helping others in the process of making a thank you check from Longevity, or wanting to know more about how to become a certified holistic health coach, you're in the right place. Because what we do each and every month with Q&A with Pharmacist Ben and Becca, or Monday through Friday with Daily with Doc and Becca, is to provide a resource and information to help you become the best that you can be so that you can also help others. Why not take that empowerment and empower others as well? Come join us. Get back with the person that shared this program with you and say, hey, I want in. Or I've got a lot of people that I know that are dealing with the things that were mentioned on this program. Let's help them out. Let's work together. If there's nobody to thank, I have my amazing team. This is just a few that can be reached at 855-949-3377. Again, that's 855-949-3377. And you will be in contact with one of the Daily with Doc phone team members. So everybody, please, I don't want to forget AJ out on YouTube, doing a great job, keeping that communication going with the people that are watching on with us. Thank you, AJ Sportis, for doing that. Ruth Ellen Sanchez.
Facebook as well.
Oh, he's on Facebook as well, watching Facebook.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. So we need somebody that loves to watch Rumble. And then whatever platforms that you prefer to watch, let us know. We want to know. Go to dailywithdoc.com, click on contact, and send us an email to let us know what your favorite platforms are, because we are getting ready to explode, but we want to make sure that we are exploding where the people are. So thank you again. Go team. That's right. We have Marilyn. Oh my goodness. Folks, if you were here live with us and you had that chat open, wow, that's awesome. So she's doing what I used to do before I did what I'm doing now. And that's making sure that the information that was shared was put in print. So it's like, what did he just say? Oh, you can read it, what he just said. Marilyn did a fantastic job doing that. And Sherry, you're just this quiet little mouse in the background, making sure that everybody gets in, making sure that the cameras are all doing what they're supposed to do, and just making it such a smooth presentation. I appreciate all of you very much. And then the coaches that were on and bringing their questions, and the recommendations. So today's program was based on recommendations from last week's program and emails that are coming in. And thank you. Somebody said, good team, doing a great job. We appreciate that. We definitely love the fact that we have people from around the world watching, and we have teammates from around the world watching, but we may not have one where you are. So come join us. We have no boundaries. We have no limits. And I love that. We are free to help each other. So until next time, my name is Becca Dukes. Again, I got a phone team, 855-949-3377. You can submit questions at dailywithdoc.com. Use that contact us, or it's just contact. I've got to get that us added on there. Sorry about that, my oversight. And I'll make sure that you get in contact with a certified holistic health coach who promotes the protocols that Dr. Wallach has put together based on decades of research. Decades. And if you would like to become a certified holistic health coach and get deeper into it and make an income as a certified holistic health coach, or just having knowledge for your own use, go to coachwithbecca.com. That's coachwithbecca.com, and you will get more information about our certified holistic health coach course. So, how many times have I said until next time? This is the last one. Bye for now.